March 1943. Imagine a father trapped thousands of miles away, listening to news of his wife and 4 children being imprisoned by a brutal enemy. His despair is absolute, his fury limitless. Now, imagine this man, a genius mechanic, not a general, deciding he won't wait for approved strategy. He won't follow the rules. He will build a weapon so terrifying, so effective, that he will single-handedly end the war faster just to free his family. That weapon, a medium bomber stuffed with the firepower of a fighter squadron and modified entirely without authorization, would become the most devastating anti-shipping instrument in the Pacific. It was a project born of vengeance, an illegal experiment that would either earn its creator a court-martial or save the Allied war effort. This is the story of Paul "Pappy" Gunn, the maverick who built the B-25 Strafer, and the moment his unauthorized fury triggered the annihilation of a Japanese convoy at the Battle of the Bismarck Sea. Early March 1943, Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. Captain Paul Irvin Gunn, his hands stained with oil, stared at the B-25 Mitchell bomber before him. Where the bombardier's glass nose should have been, 8 forward-firing .50 caliber machine guns protruded. This was a violation of every regulation, an unauthorized modification born from desperation. Gunn, a 43-year-old former Navy Chief Petty Officer, was fighting his own private war. Gunn's personal odyssey began on December 8, 1941, Manila time. He watched Japanese bombers destroy the American Air Force in the Philippines. As the Japanese forces closed in, Gunn's wife, Clara Louise, known as Polly, and their 4 children were in Manila. He flew reconnaissance and transport missions, even earning a Distinguished Flying Cross for flying an unarmed transport into Bataan. But he couldn't reach his family. He was ordered to evacuate to Australia, leaving his family behind. Weeks later, Polly and the children were interned by the Japanese at the University of Santo Tomas. Something broke inside Gunn. His objective changed from following orders to personal revenge. Destroy every ship and supply line that kept Japanese forces in the Philippines. When Major General George C. Kenney arrived in the Southwest Pacific in July 1942, he found a disaster. Allied air power was catastrophically ineffective against Japanese ships. High-altitude B-17 bombers were hitting less than 1% of their targets. Kenney had long theorized about skip bombing, releasing bombs at very low altitude to skip across the water, slamming into the thin hull below the waterline, but the planes lacked the forward-firing armament needed to suppress the ship's anti-aircraft fire. Then Kenney discovered Captain Paul Gunn. In the 3rd Attack Group, Gunn was crudely but effectively modifying A-20 Havoc light bombers, removing the bombardier's transparent nose and installing 4 .50 caliber machine guns to strafe targets before dropping bombs. Gunn had no formal engineering degree, but his 2 decades as a naval aviator and mechanic gave him an unmatched hands-on understanding of aircraft. While most officers would have court-martialed Gunn for these unauthorized modifications, Kenney immediately made him his special projects officer and gave him an impossible mission: modify every A-20 and eventually the larger B-25 Mitchell medium bomber for low-altitude attack. The B-25 was larger, had longer range, and could carry more forward weapons. Gunn's goal was to turn it into the most effective anti-shipping weapon in the theater. Working with North American Aviation Technical Representative Captain Jack Fox, who became his co-conspirator, Gunn began modifying the B-25s. He replaced the glass nose with a solid metal one, housing 4 .50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns. Then he added 2 more .50 caliber guns in cheek blisters on either side of the forward fuselage. Finally, he locked the dorsal turret in the forward position, adding 2 more guns that the co-pilot could operate, or that the pilot could fire using a master trigger. The result was a B-25 with 8 forward-firing .50 caliber machine guns, delivering the combined firepower of more than 1 fighter aircraft. This massive firepower created immense challenges. The aircraft became nose-heavy, the recoil created structural stress, and the guns needed precise harmonization. Gunn compensated by repositioning equipment and personally testing each aircraft, adjusting the mounts until all 8 weapons converged their fire at the exact target range. Gunn and Major Ed Larner, the commander of the newly equipped 91st Bombardment Squadron, developed the new tactics. The B-25s would approach ships at extremely low altitude, sometimes as low as 50 feet above the water, at maximum speed. At 1,000 yards, the pilot would open fire with all 8 guns. A stream of lead would rake the decks, suppressing or killing anti-aircraft gunners, destroying the superstructure, and creating chaos. Then, at 200 to 400 yards, the pilot would release a bomb with a 4 to 5 second delayed fuse. The bomb would skip across the water and slam into the hull below the waterline, where the armor was weakest. The explosion, enhanced by the incompressibility of water, could break the ship's keel. The entire devastating attack took just 10 seconds. In late February 1943, ultra-intercepts provided detailed information on a major Japanese convoy assembling at Rabaul. Its destination was Lae, New Guinea, carrying 6,900 troops of the 51st Division and their supplies, escorted by 8 destroyers. General Kenny saw this as a chance to test his modified aircraft against the most important target since Pearl Harbor. He assembled a coordinated strike force of B-17s, RAF Beaufighters, P-38 Lightnings, and crucially, guns modified B-25 strafers. The orders were explicit: sink every ship. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea began on the morning of March 3, 1943. After medium-altitude B-17 strikes forced the ships to maneuver, the low-altitude aircraft arrived. Beaufighters strafed first, suppressing defenses, but then the modified B-25s arrived and the slaughter began. Targeting the transport Kyoku Seimaru, pilot pushed his nose down to 50 feet. At 1,000 yards, the 8 guns opened up, 6,800 rounds per minute, ripping into the transport, shredding the superstructure, and blowing apart anti-aircraft guns. Then came the skip bombs. 2 500-pound bombs skipped across the water and slammed into the hull below the waterline. The underwater explosions ripped the bottom out of the transport, sinking it within 15 minutes. Wave after wave of B-25s executed the same devastating profile. Guns blazing, bombs skipping, ships exploding. The transport Kenkoku Maru broke in half and sank in under 10 minutes. The destroyer Shirayuki, Admiral Masatami Kimura's flagship, was hit by strafing fire that killed most of the bridge crew, and secondary explosions blew off its stern. The coordination was perfect. The P-38 Lightnings kept the Japanese Zero fighters occupied at high altitude, while the B-25s operated at masthead height, where fighters could not safely attack. By nightfall on March 3rd, the annihilation was complete. All 8 transports and 4 of the 8 destroyers had been sunk. More than 5,700 Japanese troops were casualties. Allied losses were 4 aircraft. The mathematics were simple and brutal. The battle demonstrated conclusively that land-based aircraft could destroy a heavily escorted naval convoy, validated guns' every modification, and convinced Japan that resupplying New Guinea by sea was no longer feasible. The success led to the immediate expansion of the modification program. North American aviation eventually incorporated guns' innovations into factory production, resulting in the B-25G with a 75mm cannon and the definitive B-25J model. The final B-25J variant could mount up to 18.50 caliber machine gun, the most heavily armed bomber of World War II. Japanese troops quickly learned to fear the distinctive roar of the Mitchell engines. Throughout this period, Gunn's family remained imprisoned at Sto Tomas. He continued to fly combat missions even after being badly wounded by a white phosphorus bomb fragment that tore into his shoulder in late 1944. His personal war ended on February 3, 1945, when elements of the 1st Cavalry Division liberated the Sto Tomas internment camp. Polly and the 4 children, emaciated but alive, were freed after 3 years and 14 days of imprisonment. General MacArthur personally arranged for their flight to Australia to reunite with Pappy Gunn. Paul Irvin Pappy Gunn retired as a colonel in 1948. His decorations included the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Silver Star, and a staggering 9 Purple Hearts. His legacy is the B-25 Strafer, a weapon born of personal desperation, technical brilliance, and a defiant refusal to accept bureaucratic limitations. His modifications saved thousands of Allied lives and shortened the war. The man who sought only to free his family ended up destroying a navy.